Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon. It's good to see you all. I have a warning. It's too late for me not to have 3 cups of coffee today. We had an Industrial Commission meeting, and way better than anything I'm going to be able to say to you today, I wish that you would been able to just pipe in part of that meeting, because it was all about you. It was literally about everything that I know you heard from Commissioner Fedorchak, and you've heard from others, but these are the matters that we're attentive to in that Capitol building. And today's Industrial Commission meeting was no different from that. And it's an honor to be here with you. Time goes fast. Last year I was here with you, and Jason told me that I spoke way too long. So this year we're going to keep it a little bit shorter. But I want to, when I get to the end of this too, I'd really welcome the opportunity if you've got some questions that in particular you'd like me to be thinking about, or it's just something you'd like me to leave here with and put some thought into. That's what we're here for. And we have an open door. It sounds cliche to people, but as my staff knows, the phone rings and we get back to people and we want to hear and we meet and exchange ideas. I should start for sure, especially with this group, with thanks to all of you for everything that you do for the state of North Dakota. And thanks too, because it doesn't end there, as you all know. It doesn't end there at all. I mean, I know how important it is, if we want to just look at this as an economic development thing, right? We say, well, there's all important jobs in coal country and energy production in the state of North Dakota, and there are. It supports all the towns and communities in our state economy and all those things. Those things are all true. It's true all across North Dakota and the region and the country. It's all of those things. And as we also see, if we're paying attention, it is a driver of everything between our quality of life and, in a climate like ours, our ability to have life, and international conflict and war and peace all around the globe, driven by these policies. No kidding, I'm not just saying this because he's our governor. I said it today at the Industrial Commission meeting that if the debate for who's going to be the next president of the United States revolved around the issues that we can just sit and talk openly about in an Industrial Commission meeting, and the governor, ties that into regional interests and national and then international interests. I'm tired of the national media saying things like patting him on the head and saying, he's really smart and a nice guy. Why don't you ask some of the questions that he's raising? Why don't you ask some of the candidates to talk about this? Why don't you go through, instead of letting people talk about how great it'll be when we're all driving electric vehicles, and any of you have electric vehicles, I'm sure they're nice. One sped away, I drive a Jeep, but I was at a stoplight yesterday, and there was an electric vehicle next to me, and I couldn't believe how fast that vehicle took off. And there my praise ends. But it really was fast. But I do wonder. I wonder sometimes, we were just chatting back behind the curtain there, and I just want to impart you with one thing in particular. Again, thanks to your organization, thanks to all the companies and the entities that you work for and how hard you all work. I said at one point today, what the Congress of the United States needs is people from around the table at an Industrial Commission meeting. And I don't mean the Ag Commissioner, the Governor, or the Attorney General. I'm talking about people in from the EERC. I'm talking about people in from Minn Kota, people in from all sorts of different entities all across North Dakota, solving problems so that we can preserve jobs, so that we can preserve our way of life. And don't kid yourself, so you can preserve America's way of living and world peace. That's not too grand to point out. But instead, we live in a country whose politics are broken. We live in a country where we look out here and we say, the things we want to have, and we don't want to talk about how do we get there, and what does it take to support that? We have a country where I read through some stuff, some information was provided to me in the last days, and it's information about what the work that you all do and what you produce. But I need you to understand that I want to be a conduit for that in my work on the Industrial Commission, and also in my work of having the privilege of periodically, too often, going to war against our own federal government, because they're at war against us. I said today at the meeting, Not to quote myself from the meeting, but one of the things I point out today, it's so obvious. Our federal government, the current administration, doesn't even care about the legal merits of the cases, of the regulations that they're passing down. They don't even care about the relative legal merits of the positions that they're pushing in our courts, because they don't have to. They print money. They pass regulations by people they're not elected by anybody. You don't know who they are, but they're impacting your job more than most elected officials. They're passing regulations with heavy costs and burdens on an industry that their political supporters at the moment have decided to snub their nose at, while they're driving their electric, they think, magic car that doesn't require anything except for just plug it in and it's automatic. They literally don't care. I said today, almost every single lawsuit that we brought, and we brought a bunch of them, and we've had some great successes on a few, and we're going to have successes on more. We have to. I read through them at first glance. I go through there, and it seems inevitable. I get to the law part of it, and I start reading through, and it's like, it's not even a question. They're violating their own laws. My third week as the Attorney General of North Dakota, I was in the Supreme Court of the United States on North Dakota and West Virginia versus the EPA to talk about, among other things, the simple doctrine of major questions doctrine. And people say, wow, that sounds fancy. It's not that fancy. What it says is elected, accountable people have to be the ones to pass the laws that impact your job and your company. When it has very large, significant, dynamic economic consequences, it has to be passed by accountable elected bodies, not by bureaucrats at the EPA who you will never know. And they aren't going to answer to you. They aren't going to answer to your paycheck. They aren't going to answer to your company. They aren't going to answer to the LEC. And they were handed a pretty big defeat, the EPA in that case. North Dakota can be proud of its role in those companion cases, but it was just a start. And we're committed to this in the Attorney General's office. We have substantial resources from our legislature to augment the staff that we have. We have one of the smallest offices in the country. We're adding lawyers. We're building that internal practice forward. And in the meantime, we're continuing to augment with outside counsel to ensure that North Dakota's interests are placed front and center. We can't do that without the people that come in and are around that table at the Industrial Commission or who come to our office. Jason and others, so many others, that come in and will talk to us about the issues of importance to alert us to that. The law is a living, breathing thing. It requires the ground floor knowledge of what's happening and what will be the consequences of the mandates coming down from a government that does not care about organizations and groups like this. They don't care. They don't care, so we have to make them care. The American public, if they were made aware of the consequences of the movement toward by 2039, that sounds like a long time away. But when you're talking about these issues, it's not that long. By 2039, there will be 100 gigawatts of North America's baseload power is going to be retired. But don't worry, there's a plan. There's a plan. Around 10% of that's going to be replaced. Let's round up. 10% of that's going to be replaced. So that's the plan. We're going to retire 100 gigawatts, and we're going to replace 10% of it. That's okay. I'm sure demand won't go up at all between now and 2039. I'm sure winters will moderate. I'm sure summers will cool. I'm sure that the medical needs of our communities, all of that will change for the better. I'm sure at some point someone will start planning for the hundreds of nuclear power plants they're going to need, I guess, to replace the baseload power that we rely on in this, and that we export out of North Dakota. North Dakota is the lifeblood for neighboring states with our energy production, reliable, cost efficient. And you know the thanks we get? We get threats of lawsuits from the state of Minnesota. They don't like the way we produce. They don't like the way we produce the energy that they rely on to keep their population alive, fed. The reality is their politics don't like it, and politics drives it. Ask the people of Minnesota. Sit down with them, give them some of the basic statistics on things, and tell them what's going to happen if their state prevails in that what will eventually be a lawsuit. We're going to do everything we can to avoid it, but we can't accept their mandates. It's not okay in a country where the several states can be passing regulations because their political dynamic allows it, and then they impose it on the neighboring states that's giving them life-sustaining energy. It doesn't work that way. By the way, the Supreme Court's already decided that, but that doesn't stop these people. It doesn't stop them. Well, they're not going to stop us. You have our word on that. The tens of millions, the hundreds of millions of dollars that the state of North Dakota, a lot of it coming in through the Industrial Commission, going out to research and development, granting programs to help us make sure that we're at the cutting edge of technology, finding solutions, identifying the problems along the way. All that is being done for grand reasons, for a country, for a region, and for a state, but grand reasons for you and your table, your pocketbook, and your life, and the life that you and your family have, and that you build around this great industry. I was expressing in the back, and I'm an attorney, so I guess maybe that makes me abrasive by default or something. But I am literally dismayed looking at this national government. I'm dismayed to wonder how it is that they can be so uncaring and intentionally unknowing about the consequences of their own regulatory regimen coming through. I mentioned North Dakota and West Virginia versus the EPA. This next court term, and you know what? wouldn't blame you if you found the Supreme Court of the United States boring, but they are about to decide a bunch of cases, hear arguments on and decide a bunch of cases that are either going to build on North Dakota and West Virginia versus the EPA. They're going to either build on that and construct a wall against those who want to undermine and ruin this industry and others that are important for the American people, or they go the other direction. Now, I know which way I hope, but I also think I know which way I see this going. I really believe we're in a new era of new federalism. I think I said the same thing last year, and we've seen other moves in that direction. It matters. Courts are boring. I get it. But this Supreme Court of the United States at this moment, they're sending back power, no pun intended, power back to states and saying that's up to you. Where the people of North Dakota can petition their government for a different policy and a different approach and a different regulatory regimen. People weigh the benefits and the costs all the time in our personal lives, in our professional lives, and in our communal state of North Dakota lives. That's important. It's the only hope we have. It's the only hope that we have. 10 years from now, we're going to reap what we sow right now. We are either going to be a nation of dramatic brown and blackouts, with economic prosperity suffering dramatically, with whole communities across the state like North Dakota drying up and moving on. And what will be lost, it'll be lost only if we lose the ability to, whether it's go to Bismarck and petition your government through your elected officials to, let's put more money into research and development, our universities and in our private sector, and get those private match dollars. And your companies have been fabulous about joining with your state in finding a way forward and solving the problems that you can all identify. And you've solved the problems one after the other, and all the federal government seems to want to do is erect another barrier. We have to have an open discussion about that. We've got to engage constantly at a federal level. We've got a fantastic federal delegation. I'm sure you would agree. They're fantastic. They need your power too. They need the strength of your arguments and the force of your arguments and the real life human consequences of what this overregulation and overregulation doesn't even capture it really. Poor regulation. Mindless regulation. It's been an interesting summer. Was an interesting summer. You look around our country, as China brings online, I think it's every week, another coal-fired plant that lacks many, if not any, of the protective, cutting-edge technologies that we have in this country. As China does that, and I'm sure they'll want to partner with us because they're all about, helping us with the American way. As China does that, we in this country are unilaterally disarming. I gave you one of the statistics, but I don't have to tell you about the battles right here in North Dakota. And we do all of that, and people say, well, you have to. I mean, it's about clean air. I mean, you people don't care about clean air as much as we do when we're sitting in our little building in Washington, D.C. I went to law school so I could be a bureaucrat at the EPA and tell people what to do. You don't understand. I'm like, well, how about forest management? How are they doing for air quality? That wasn't a week. That wasn't a bad month. What do you think the air quality impact was here in the state of North Dakota from the very warlike Canadian people? Kidding. They're nice. I know we've got some in the room. It's true, though. I mean, but the environmentalists don't talk about that. What would be the positive impact on the last many months on the health of tens of thousands, millions of Americans and others if we managed forests better? But that's not a headline-grabbing thing. That's not a headline-grabbing thing. I don't know about you, it impacted my family's health all summer long. North Dakotans know about, care about, are passionate about the great outdoors. Our remarkable open spaces. We believe in preserving and our stewardship responsibility for the environment. We're serious about it. The hundreds of millions of dollars being poured into advancing technologies so that we can cut harmful emissions. And we've made such tremendous progress on that over the years, while still remaining economic. We can do both. You just got to give people the opportunity to make those advancements. I don't want to belabor that anymore. I want you to understand that we're committed to it. These would be strange things to say if I didn't plan to continue what I've been doing the last year and 3/4 on this front, doing everything that I can on the legal fronts, in our case filings, and the cases that we're bringing, and the cases that we're joining with other states from around the United States, filing amicus briefs, which is basically like a friend of the court kind of brief in Supreme Court cases of the United States and the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, matters that we're litigating here in the state of North Dakota. I know the kind of cases that sometimes make their way into the newspaper, and I can give you the issues, and you could guess them too. It's these other ones, though, that are going to have the biggest impact on you, your job, your companies, your great industry, the economy, and the health of North Dakota. And we're bringing those, and we've got the resources to go there in a lot of ways. We've got a tremendous group of lawyers. We're adding lawyers that the legislature was generous to give us some additions on. There's been funds been set aside through the great work. Jason and others who did a lot of work to get the legislature to set aside some litigation funds, so when that day comes that you've got to go to war, it matters that the state of Minnesota knows that these folks got put into a fund $3 million for us to litigate and fight ferociously for North Dakota's way of life, for your jobs, for these great companies, and for everything that you provide. That's a war chest. That matters. That matters. And Minnesota hasn't brought their, we haven't had to bring our lawsuits yet, but everybody's on notice. Everybody knows what's coming in the event that this gets enforced in a way that impacts negatively the great power that you're producing. And that's our pledge. It's always going to be our pledge. To be honest with you, it's not why I went to law school. If you can tell me why I went to law school, that'd be great. I'm trying to talk my daughter out of going to law school. So far, I talked her into taking a gap year. She's like, oh, Dad, I'll take a gap year. Any suggestions? I said, yeah, I've got one for you. Hop in your Jeep, drive to Colorado, get a ski pass, go to work in a bar. Now, is that great dadding or what? She looked at me, she said, Dad, you know there's no way I'm going to do that. I was kind of counting on that, actually. I said, I know, but when you're my age, when you're 57, you'll look back and wish that you had done just exactly that. But anyway, she's got her gap year going. I don't know how I got started on that, but I always tell stories about my kids, so law school. Yeah, I didn't go to law school because I thought to myself, someday I want to battle the EPA. I've been a prosecutor off and on for 30 years. I was in Philly for 5 years as a DA. I've been the U.S. attorney twice in the state for a total of 10 years. And now in this office, which I'm proud to hold, I'm the first prosecutor to be the Attorney General of North Dakota since Al Olson walked across the hall in 1980 to become our governor. I'm finding that skill set and temperament has served me well thus far in having the desire to take on issues of consequence in our communities, in our state, in our nation. Our governor's running for president of the United States. He's been on the debate stage twice. First time he got no questions. His last time around, got no questions the first hour, and then he engaged. And it's remarkable to watch the national media and commentators pointing out, like, man, that governor of North Dakota is smart. He is smart. He's really smart. He's really capable and understands how all of this fits into the larger picture. And there are others of us as well who want to join in that. And we got to grab that national discussion. This is not my announcement that I'm running for president of the United States, the traditional springboard to the presidency, the Attorney General of North Dakota. No. But we're not going to shrink back. I've got 2 matters right now pending that I intend to be going to Washington, D.C. to talking with the Justice Department on and engaging. You got to remember, don't be so modest in life. Remember, there are 50 of us. And we can demand an audience on issues that are important to this room and elsewhere. When there are matters where you have groups going and delegations going to meet with bureaucrats or leaders of entities, whatever they might be, if you believe that this could be helped along by having the Ag Commissioner who served so long on our Industrial Commission, or the Governor, or the Attorney General, or our Solicitor General, or whomever it might be, don't hesitate to ask us if there's some way that it can be a force multiplier for the interests, because your interests are ours. These matters are literally why I decided, after a short time outside of public life, again, I said there's one job that I was interested in. Last summer, I stood here as your Attorney General by appointment. This year, I'm here after election, and I'm privileged to be doing this work. And by this work, I mean the interests that are so important in this room. So I'm gonna stop there. I could read through. I've got some more, and they're great. They're great statistics, and I appreciate them, and I internalize them. But what matters to me most is that you understand that I know the battles that you're in, and I know, and I want you to know we're unified in those, in looking out for North Dakota's interests in your job, the company you work for, the homes you heat, the hospitals that you power, the research and development that's getting done. You've got a great group of, lobbyists is a dirty word, right? It's kind of a dirty word. I don't see it that way. You've got tremendous government relations folks who routinely will meet with us, bring us objectively verifiable, believable, credible, helpful information, and we value that. We really value that, and we value the conversations and the trust and tipping us off to issues the importance that we might not otherwise have heard about. And that's why it matters to have an open door. That's why people have my cell phone and they can call, try to get back as quickly as we can. So thanks very much for everything that you do. I appreciate the invitation to come down and share a few thoughts, maybe more to the point, some sentiments. We are, in our daily work, whether it's litigating a matter against the federal government, writing off, joining a bunch of other attorneys general to write a letter to the EPA and demand action prior to bringing suit or what have you, or helping lobby down the hallway with the legislature, work on important legislation. I had a back and forth. It was damn unpleasant with a state senator this week on an issue of importance to him. It's important to me too. I happen to have the law on my side. He's coming at me. It was pretty clear he had a lawyer with him. He's writing a lot of stuff and pointing a lot of things out to me. Don't point out paragraph 3 without reading paragraph 2, I had to tell him. We go back and forth. Like, we'll take on those issues. I won't bore you with what it was, but that was a very important issue for this room. An extremely important issue for this room. I told my division directors after a contentious series of meetings a couple of months back that whatever the reasons that I ran for this job, I said I did not run for this job to make friends. One of the division directors said, well, you're doing a good job of that. I said, well, feel this though. Around this state, matters that are important to the people in this room, those are about 85%ers, maybe even more. They're with you. They are totally with you. So is the Office of Attorney General. And what we don't know about, we look to you for insight on. And then we join together and we do the very best that we can to further those interests. That's our commitment going forward. I can't thank you enough for what you do. No North Dakotan can thank you enough. And not to mention Minnesota and everyone else we're exporting our energy to. And you know what? In some small way, maybe not such a small way, it also impacts the wider region and it impacts the nation. Support our federal delegations too. Support them. This isn't a fundraising pitch. It's saying support them with your information, your knowledge. Petition them for change and movement on things where they can do it, because they're very effective people. They're in good positions out there and they can help and do. I know they do. You know this, but I want to encourage you even more. If there are questions, I'd be happy to take those questions, do the best I can, and maybe I'll have to scratch them down and get back to you. But and by the way, you can watch those Industrial Commission meetings online. They're fascinating. They are fascinating. Anything? People are afraid to ask and think that could go on for a long time. All right, listen, I appreciate your attention for a few minutes here, and I'm going to stick around for a little bit. If there's anything you want to chat about, I'd be glad to talk. I'll stand in the back of the room there somewhere and listen to the next speaker. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. Thanks, Kevin.